Welcome everyone to the public OWASP Global Board Meeting, September 2025. I will start with attendance. From my list, Steve,
Here.
Harold,
Here.
Sam,
Here.
Ashwini,
Yeah.
Diego,
Here.
and I am here, Ricardo. And note that Avi will not be in attendance for today. And welcome to all our guests. Let me just scroll up. I can't see Andrew's screen, so I'm using my own here. Let me just read the conflict of interest statement. As the board consists of individuals from many competing organizations, OWASP and its board shall abide by all applicable antitrust and competition laws. To avoid any perceived or actual conflict of interest or antitrust concerns under U.S. federal, state, or regulations, only the published agenda shall be discussed or voted upon or amended as below. If there are any conflicts of interest, board members are expected to disclose the conflict of interest and must recuse themselves from discussion and voting. Next, I will ask if there are any changes to the agenda.
I would like to possibly get the finance report and GESMA lawyers, because we've got guests out of the road before we do the executive director summary.
Sure.
Would that be okay?
Absolutely. Does anyone have an issue with that?
No, but can I just remind you, Ricardo, one other potential changes to the agenda that we tried to squeeze into the last board meeting, but we ran out of time.
Yes.
The 2 points where one change was proposed by you, and that was the formation of an audit committee, and
Yes.
that's a discussion around that topic. And the second topic was for me, and that was a discussion around the project summit, again, time permitting.
Absolutely. And we can squeeze them both one at the end here, under any other business, if that's okay. All right. Okay. We'll move right along. We'll just do the approval of the previous minutes, and then we'll engage our guests here. So has all the directors read the previous board meetings from August 2025? Anyone not read them? Oh, that's good. Okay, we will take a quick vote of approval on them from the same list that I have. Steve?
Yes.
Harold?
Yes.
Sam?
Yes.
Ashwini?
Yes.
Okay. Diego?
Yes.
And that's a yes for myself, Ricardo. Great.
And just to
So
note
pass.
that Avi is absent today. So
Yes.
Yes.
the vote passes 6-0.
Yes.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass over to Chris to do the finance report for this month. Chris, if you want to share, you've got co-host privileges.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I thought you were going to start with. Okay.
Oh,
good.
I was going to do Chris and GESMA because they're our guests this session.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And that way they can drop early.
Okay. No
Okay.
problem.
I did send a video. Did you want me to go through the finance report? I did send a video. I thought you were going to be reviewing.
I unfortunately did not upload that, so the board hasn't had a chance to review it. Could you please? I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. That's fine. Bear with me. I'll wing it. How's that?
That's fine. Thank you so much.
I can bring up the management report for you, or
I've got it right here.
no? Okay.
Okay. So, and I did start my video by providing an update on the audit. The audit's moving along well. As of last week, we've provided them with all of their requested outstanding items, and we're expecting a draft. We should have an audit draft before our next board meeting. I'm expecting the next couple of weeks. We've also provided them with the 990 information, so that should be moving forward as well. So all good there. And we also met with Andrew and the team to kick off the FY26 budget. We had our kickoff meeting last week and waiting for some information on the locations in different buckets we need to budget for, but that process is moving forward as well. So, and then we'll jump into August financials. And start with the balance sheet. Cash did decrease a little bit during the month. That was largely due to a payment of $136,000, I believe, that was made to, sorry, I had all this information written down yesterday, the Marriott DC for the November event. But so cash decreased, ending cash at the end of August was $1.9 million. And prepaid expenses did increase. We put a deposit down for Global AppSec FY27. So that's an increase in our assets on the prepaid expense side. Accounts payable fell, and this is just due to the timing of regular payments to vendors. And our total liabilities and net assets at the end of August was $3,041,000. Jumping to the statement of activity, and as usual, I'll go through this relatively quickly, and then we'll look at it compared to the budget. August, our revenue was $187,000, almost $188,000, down a little bit from July, just due to timing. And total expenses were $315,000 compared to just under $302,000 in the month of July. We did have a net loss of $120,000 for the month of August and a year-to-date net gain of $523,686,000. Looking at the budget summary, we did meet with Dawn, Starr, and Lauren last month a couple of times. I met with them, and Leah also met with them to discuss the coding of conference income. We did get July and August completely reconciled. And I believe Lauren is currently just confirming with Dawn and Star the numbers for January through June, and we expect to have that updated shortly. So total income as of the end of August is $3.3 million. We had budgeted for just under $2.9 million at this time. Income, we're exceeding our budget by $435,000. And again, conference income overall is higher. Corporate sponsorships are a bit lower. And project donations are higher than expected. When we get to the expense side, community outreach, we're running under. Conference expenses were $95,000 over at this point, and that is really just due to timing. I looked into this because it surprised me a little bit, and we had a payment for DC of that $136,000 payment to Marriott DC was budgeted to be paid in September, and it got paid in August. So that's why our year-to-date we're a little bit over budget, but that was just a timing issue, and I expect that to bounce back next month. Everything else is right online until we get to payroll and salary related expenses. We are significantly over budget this year. And also project expenses are over budget. Total expenses year to date, just over $2.8 million compared to a budget of just under $2.6 million. And again, our total year to date net gain is $523,000. We had budgeted at this point in the year to have $289,000. So we're exceeding that by about $234,000. We have just over 5 months cash on hand at this point, and our current ratio, which is our current assets compared to our liabilities, is a very strong 37-1. And I'll just pop open the cash flow forecast here. And we'll have this extended once we get the budget finalized, but right now we're forecasting through December, and we are anticipating ending with $2,068,000 in cash at the end of this fiscal year.
It might be a little bit less. We're about to increase our headcount by 1.
Okay, I don't have that information, but I assume that,
I'll
That'll
provide it
affect-
to you soon. Yeah.
yeah, that'll affect our salary and any severance information you'll have to send. But any
Yep.
questions on the financials?
Hi, Chris. I have a question regarding the uncategorized income. Obviously, that's
Yes.
been an issue for quite a few months recently. I know we were on track last time, but I believe there are at least $60,000 of uncategorized from our last month's meeting. How's that going?
Let me pull that up really quickly.
Our uncategorized is actually pretty low. Year to date, it's only at 8,000. And that's just due to some small figures from Stripe that we haven't quite reconciled, but it has nothing to do with Glue Up.
Yeah, I think that, and just so that everybody's aware, for Glue Up, we don't have the reporting figured out to get the automated reporting in order for us to be able to handle that how we have historically and to map it and upload it. But we do have a process in place that Lauren is leading and work closely with your team to get all of that. It should be fully up to date by next month's report.
Okay.
Wonderful. Good to
Thanks.
hear, because last month it was around 60,000 and now it's down to 8,000.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really good. Yep.
And there will potentially always be a little something in there just from a timing issue.
Yeah.
Dawn, you have a
But it
question?
should only be current month.
I'm working with Glue Up. They're coming up with a report. Unfortunately, they want to charge for things, so I have to figure out what that is. Andrew's aware of it, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed that by next month, we might have a report that goes directly to you.
Great. And yeah, I mean, we don't want to cause you to incur inordinate
Right,
expense
I'm
on our
kind
part,
of,
so
yeah,
whatever we need to do.
surprised, yeah, that we would get charged, but that's a whole nother story. But
Right.
so keeping fingers crossed that we might have it even more, I might have it simplified more.
Great. And yeah, like I said, if that's not cost effective, well, we're happy to keep working.
Yeah,
with the team.
yeah.
We just like to take the burden off of them.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. One more question, actually, on the age receivables. I noticed our 90-day is quite what I consider significant.
I agree.
What are
We
we
send
doing
that-
to get that number down?
Yeah, we send that regularly to Andrew and Dawn, and
I
I'll
think
let them
Dawn's
do
reaching
that.
out to the vendors to see if they are still
Yeah,
paying.
I did quite a bit of that last week,
Mhm.
and I'm getting funds in because we're
Okay.
working so much on the uncategorized, because 2 months ago, that was a few $100,000. But I'm starting to get the funds in, so,
Yeah.
and we have quite a few of them are coming off that you see the lower fees, like under $100. Those are really
Yeah.
bank fees. I send a list to
Ah,
charity.
okay.
So we had
a few of
listed,
them off.
yeah, so a few of those will come off, but I got a few funds in yesterday. I got like 7 different things coming in. So that should be going back down now.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
It's just a timing thing, like Chris said, I missed, the 5th type deal.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Yep.
All right. Are there any more questions from anyone? Okay. Thank you very much, Chris, Leah. Thank you so much. And Andrew, what's the next bullet point we're moving to?
Gesma, to us, Russ and Aaron, to describe the work that they've been doing for us to answer some of the questions raised at the May in-person board meeting.
Okay.
And to make sure that we're on firm footing for the OWASP Corporation if the board decides to do that. Aaron, I think you did most of the work.
Yeah.
Oh, you're not coming through with audio.
You're not coming through too well. Yeah.
Just check your microphone.
He's unmuted. Just nothing coming through.
You guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
Okay,
fine.
sorry about that. Got a
No
new
worries.
laptop, so Yeah, these things are never smooth, but nice to meet everybody. Sorry about that. So I'm the tax partner at Gesmer. I work with closely with Russ. So yeah, Andrew, I was looking into these issues. I don't know if you want to briefly just kind of set the table for what I was looking at, and then I can get into it.
Sure. So the board tasked me with finding out some legal answers as to the appropriate structure for an OWASP corporation. And the idea is for commercial activities that we possibly couldn't do as a non-profit. The list of activities, I've enumerated the ones that I could think of, but maybe it's not comprehensive, and maybe it's a chance for the board to actually say these are the things that we'd like to do, in addition to the things that I did say that we'd like to do, such as consulting services, training, certification, um, helping project leaders become employees and things like that. So some of the things that I enumerated off the top of my head from our discussions, maybe there's some things that I left off, and you could ask Aaron. So some of the things that are Aaron has pointed out is that we can do some of the things like training, like we've always done, without not from the point of view as it's a prohibited activity. But at the end of the day, basically, there are certain things that corporations can do reasonably easily that a nonprofit can't do. So there's pluses and minuses for both things. So we asked what was the appropriate structure look like. I asked whether or not the entity could function in the way the board wanted to. But fundamentally, I really wanted to get down to the nuts and bolts of were there any sort of like true impediments for a nonprofit to own or have shareholdings in a corporate entity? What would it look like if it got investment and things like that? So, Aaron, do you want to sort of kick off and sort of?
Yeah, well, let me pick some of those apart, and I'll kind of talk at a high level, and if anybody has questions, please raise your hand on Zoom, and please feel free to interrupt. So, the structure itself is pretty common. Some of you may have seen this in the nonprofit space, where a for-profit subsidiary of a 501c3 that happens fairly frequently. The reason that's typically done is because either the organization wants to do things that are not necessarily in furtherance of its tax exempt purpose, and therefore doing that inside of the organization would potentially put its tax exemption at risk. And so it gets kicked down to the for-profit subsidiary. It can do those activities, pay tax on any income, and kind of isolate that. The other reason would be if the organization is doing things, revenue making activities that maybe are consistent with its tax exempt purpose, but the volume of those activities are becoming so extensive that it's putting its public support test at risk, meaning it's generating so much revenue from these activities that no longer is the organization getting, a third of its revenue from other tax exempt entities or the general public, or however the organization has been tax exempt approved. So I guess the question is, does that align with what your organization is looking to do? We could certainly set up a subsidiary. It can do those activities that can be isolated at that level. In terms of getting investment, that's less common, I would say, for a tax exempt to form a for-profit subsidiary and then seek outside investment. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but the outside investors would, just be part of the capital stack of that corporation. I guess the thing to think about there, and maybe Russ could weigh into, is what's that return on investment look like? How are those investors, do they get preferred shares, or do they have preferences, distribution preferences as compared to the organization? So that's something to think about from an outside investment perspective. The other big consideration when it comes to a for-profit subsidiary is control. And I know that's probably a key consideration for all of you. Certainly, the organization would be tasked with kind of setting up the initial board, setting up the initial officers of the for-profit sub. That's fine. What can't happen is that the for-profit sub can't be seen as a proxy for the organization, because then the IRS in an audit would say, well, this is really just a puppet organization, disguised as a separate entity, but really it's doing the same things that the organization is doing. Therefore, for example, if the for-profit sub was engaged in some lobbying activity, If it's controlled by the same folks, more or less, the IRS may say, well, that's really the same thing as the organization doing the lobbying activity themselves. So there's no, I think I may have mentioned this, Andrew, in some of our emails, the IRS is kind of intentionally opaque on this issue. They don't say, you can have this many board seats overlapping or this many officers overlapping. They kind of say the two organizations just need to operate independent of one another. That doesn't mean there can't be some overlap, but sometimes optics rule the game here. So we'd want to be very careful that there's no perceived kind of control, heavy-handed control by the organization over the sub. So I'll stop there. Any questions on that stuff, or we can drill into some specific questions? Happy to do that.
So one of the main drivers from our side is Steve. Steve, have you got any questions?
Yeah, I'm actually in the middle of putting together a business plan, so I had a couple questions for you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
In terms of ownership, would this typically be what you see like in the field? Would this typically be a 100% owned subsidiary, or would it be like 80 or whatever because of shares and that sort of thing?
Well, I typically see a wholly owned for-profit sub, so it'd be 100% owned by the organization. That doesn't mean you can't go out and seek outside investment, which would dilute that. But from what I've seen, it's typically set up as a wholly owned subsidiary.
And
just, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, that kind of goes to with your first point where you said outside investment is uncommon but doable. Why is it uncommon?
Russ, I don't know, maybe you might want to weigh in on that, kind of on the corporate side.
So you just don't see it very often. The nonprofits are typically, setting these entities up for the reasons that Aaron described. So they are, they're trying to insulate. They're not trying to change their, nonprofit mission, but they know that there are some things that they may not be able to do, and so they separate them out. But they're not usually setting them up as for-profit ventures with outside investors in the typical kind of corporate sense. So it's not the reason why companies are typically setting these entities up. So you just don't see a lot of outside investors. As Aaron said, you could, and it's certainly not unheard of. But I guess the question from my perspective would be, outside investors, typically are looking to make a return on their investment, right? And so you're going to need to negotiate, the terms, figure out how that's going to work, but also, what the entity, like any other investment, you're not going to invest if you don't think it's going to make you some money, because you're putting in money, you're putting it at risk. You expect to get something back. So unless the, revenue for this entity is anticipated to be pretty significant, it seems a little unlikely that outside investors would necessarily want to invest. And then, if in a second kind of gut check question is, if the point is to do some things that might generate some revenue that you might not otherwise get, and then funnel that back in, how does that work, right? Is it just that you're getting your share of distributions back, or is there, it would be hard for a corporation, to sign agreements, to justify kind of more than actual just pro rata distributions back. So it's unclear exactly what the goal would be in terms of kind of making money from this entity to flow, additional funds in, other than just simply straight from distributions on a pro rata basis. So anyway, trying to find investors who might find this a worthwhile venture might be difficult depending on the amount of money we're talking about. And then how to flow that money in other than on a pro rata basis might get tricky. I kind of went outside your question, but I just wanted to add that as some background too.
No, I think that makes sense. I think that is going to directly influence the initial setup of the organization when it comes to the services that are initially offered, right? There's the expensive path in some cases, and there's the more frugal path. So if we were not seeking outside investments, we would probably err on the frugal side, would be my guess. But okay, that makes sense. With that, there was another question that I had related to that. Oh, profit distribution. Do you see any kind of language between the setup of a for-profit entity and the requirement to then fund the continued mission of a nonprofit foundation? And if so, what kind of language do you typically see, or would you recommend in terms of percentage back, that sort of thing?
So I don't think there would be a requirement to fund it. I mean, as with any corporation, the decision to issue a dividend would be up to the board, and they would make that determination out of their earnings and profits. So I guess the board composition of the entity would be really important, of the corporation would be really important. There's also some restrictions on how much of earnings a corporation can hold on to without making a distribution. So that might help dictate that. But I think I don't know that we could really kind of dictate that in advance, so to speak, to say, hey, corporation, you have to, distribute 90% of your earnings back to the organization every year or whatever. I think that would under Delaware law, that would be a board decision for the corporation. So I think if that's a concern on the outset, yeah, I'm not sure there's a way to guarantee that other than to make sure you're filling the board with people who are aligned with that mission.
Got it. Okay.
And just to add in, just conceptually, you could, set it up so that there are kind of two separate classes, just kind of thinking on a corporate level, you could set up so that there are two different types of classes of stock, and that they get different proportions of, of distributions. But I guess the question would be, if, so say for instance, that OWASP, foundation owns 50%, right? It would be entitled, assuming that the board is approving distributions, it would be entitled to 50% of the profits, right? And that's all fine and well, and that's normal. If for some reason the idea were to somehow increase that share, right? Then one, you could just adjust, only sell a certain percentage so that you have the right percentage of profits coming out. But if you wanted to somehow direct additional funds to go out, essentially you're doing that to the disadvantage of the other shareholders, right? Who are presumably paying and investing to get in. And I guess the question is, why would that be attractive to them, knowing that they're putting in, value worth 50%, but only getting back, say 40%, so it becomes a little hard to kind of adjust that distribution ratio unless you're just doing it straight out, by the percentage ownership, which you of course have control over because you can sell to whoever you want and set the percentage that they get for that purchase. So anyway, just wanted to add that in.
We have two questions from, I think Star had her hand up first and then Andrew.
I was just wondering, in terms of maintaining compliance, so completely from a compliance perspective in maintaining the nonprofit status, would the corporation be able to, meaning nothing is legally preventing them from making a donation back to ensure that you were always staying compliant with whatever the income, like you said, a third of your income had to be on mission, or your income had to be derived from mission or donations. So if the corporation donated back to the foundation, the nonprofit, could that be done to keep compliant with the income requirements the IRS sets?
I think that would generally be fine. Corporations make, donations all the time. I guess my question would be, if they're going to make the donation, You're saying in a case where it would need to be a non-pro rata distribute, like if there's outside investors, could they make an additional donation back to the organization to fulfill those requirements? Is that
In just very plain English, like it's a very basic scheme that in my mind would enable the mission, or not the mission, but the nonprofit to maintain its nonprofit status with a guarantee from the corporation that their activities wouldn't upset the financial status of being a nonprofit. So it's a way to ensure compliance and nothing more.
Okay. Yeah, I don't the mere existence of the for-profit sub and whatever it's doing would not put the organization at risk unless, as I mentioned before, there's a perception or reality that the for-profit sub is kind of acting as a puppet of the organization and it's doing things that a not-for-profit isn't allowed to do. But if there's independence there, then that shouldn't be an issue. To your more specific question, Star, making a donation back should be fine. But again, if we'd want to make sure that there's independence there between the for-profit and the organization, because otherwise it looks like you're just taking funds from one pocket and putting it in the other if it's all controlled by the same people.
Yeah, for sure.
And just to add to that, the independence has to be, real. First of all, but the directors of the for-profit, they're going to have, fiduciary duties to do what's right for the for-profit entity.
Right.
So it's not even there could be a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I mean, they're going to have a duty to do what's right for the company and its shareholders, irrespective of the fact that it may be owned in part by OWASP. So if doing what they're doing, serves their shareholders, one of which is OWASP, then that's fine. But they'll have a duty to make sure that they're doing things the right way.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Andrew?
Okay, so one thing you mentioned, Aaron, was Delaware. We are sort of domiciled in Delaware. Would the corporation need to also be domiciled in Delaware? Is there a better state than Delaware for a corporation to be formed?
I can throw this to Russ. I would say no. I think Delaware is the gold standard still. I know there's been some movement towards Nevada and some other states recently, but we probably set up 99% of our entities in Delaware. I would advise that. Russ, any further
Yeah,
thoughts?
no, I have nothing. No, but nothing to dispute there.
Okay.
Great. And Sam, you have a question?
Yes, I do. I have two questions actually. So question number one is going back to potential of outside investors being involved. And the question is, will it not cause a conflict of interest if these outside investors are also corporate supporters of the OWASP Foundation? So they both donate to OWASP to fund the nonprofit mission, but at the same time, they're investing in the for-profit subsidiary.
I wouldn't see that as a conflict. Again, I think the investors are investing in the for-profit sub to achieve a return on their investment, right? It's a financial investment, not a mission investment or a commitment to the organization. So I wouldn't have any issue with that, Russ. I don't know if you feel differently, but I think that's fine.
Yeah, no, I don't see a conflict there. And they would have kind of effectively a presence within both organizations. So potential conflicts could come up.
Right.
But I don't think the investment itself is, an issue, alone.
Yeah. So Sam, I think honestly, if, say for example, the corporation decided to sell board seats and then they had significant influence over the nonprofit, I think there might be a case, but that's not the current plan as far as I'm aware.
Wonderful, thank you. And my second question is around licensing, because I haven't heard that word yet, and I was expecting it, because as you know, OWASP produces content, and it's intellectual property. So is there a model where OWASP Foundation, the nonprofit foundation, actually licenses the subsidiary to perform activities which are more commercial? For example, I'll give you an example. For example, we produce OWASP Foundation owns intellectual property rights on, say, a free and open source product, which anyone can take and use, right? But what we expect the for-profit foundation do is to take that free and open source product and create commercial offering around it, including commercial support to companies who might need support. Because, for example, if someone comes to our nonprofit and saying, hey, I'm using your tool here and it's crashing, can I get some support? And we'll say, sorry, no. But they will go to the support. So how is there a licensing mechanism, and how does it usually work if a nonprofit licenses something to the for-profit subsidiary?
So yes, I think there would be a licensing regime we'd need to put in place there if the for-profit's going to be using the technology in its activities. One concern or something to think about there would be, how does that license, is that in furtherance or support of OWASP's tax exempt purpose, right? Because it can't just be licensing out technology to a for-profit entity, even if it's a controlled for-profit entity, and getting a royalty back. Why is it doing that? Is that in furtherance of its overall mission? So I think to the extent we do that, we would want to kind of document that in board minutes or otherwise to say, here's why we're doing it. Here's why it supports OWASP tax exempt purpose. But that would typically be how you would transfer that down. And it would probably be on kind of an arm's length basis that you would do that kind of a license.
And just to add to the other side of that, to the extent that the royalties or trademark or license fee for the trademark or for the software or whatever it is not really supporting its purpose, it's going to be UBTI, right? And the more of that there is, the more of a potential issue there is in terms of tax exemption.
The one thing I do have a question on licensing. I'll get to that in just a minute. There's a different kind of license questions that I have to hopefully wrap up the software license question. Currently, and this is more of a statement, I think, currently, I believe the project handbook, maybe somewhere else, maybe the policy, we have a requirement on the use of OSI approved open source licenses. I do think that we would likely need to narrow that down to a smaller subset and stay away from a few different open source licenses. Specifically, I've got the AGPL, for example, top of mind, because if the commercial entity were to create additional services on top of the open source, that code would then technically also need to be open source. So there's some things that we should probably think about with regard to the open source licenses that we recommend our projects use. Now, the license question that I do have is not around software. It's around licensing the OWASP name. Do you see that as a common thing, or a possible thing where we could license, for example, the OWASP name and the use of that name to the for-profit entity?
I would be concerned about doing that because of, again, kind of the mixing of the two pots, right? You don't want the IRS or really the general public to think that this corporation, a for-profit entity, is doing things on behalf of a tax exempt entity, right? And so if you're licensing the name, if the corporation is doing things, profit-making activities using the OWASP name, to the outside world, that's going to look like OWASP is doing those things. And that kind of, I would think, detracts from kind of the whole reason to do a for-profit subsidiary. So I would have, you could have a name that incorporates OWASP in some name, but in some way, but I would make it clear that it's a separate standalone entity and not part of the organization.
Right. I think the one of the discussions the board had was around the popularity of the OWASP name in comparison to other things. And we use Google Trends just to kind of measure what people were actually searching on in comparison to other foundations and other kind of adjacent kind of industries. And the popularity of the OWASP name, there's a lot of value there. And while we wouldn't name the for-profit entity OWASP, obviously, we were possibly thinking about the idea of incorporating the OWASP name on a licensing basis just because of the popularity of that name. So I was
Yeah.
just kind of
No,
wondering
it's
the
a good question.
feasibility.
Yeah, my concern again would be, okay, this name has some value. The organization wants to license it, but how is licensing that to a for-profit corporation in furtherance of its tax exempt purpose? Now, maybe there is a way we can get there, but that would be the consideration, not, it can't be, well, we see value in this name, and so we're going to license it to make a profit, right? It has to be, we see our licensing of this name furthering our mission or furthering our purpose in some way.
Aaron,
So
to give you an
it-
example, we
yeah.
were discussing the name OWASP Solutions, for example, right?
Mhm.
Just to give you an idea of the
Okay.
name.
Yep.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be, I mean, the licensing aspect wouldn't necessarily be to make money. In fact, we could charge the for-profit entity $1. It really, that's that's not the point. The point is to have a control in place should the for-profit entity go rogue, that we can actually pull the license, and they would be prohibited from using the name going forward.
Yeah, so I mean, Russ could probably weigh in more the specifics of the license, but I guess my concern with like a $1 license would be you have, again, I always look at this from the lens of an IRS examiner. You'd have a 501c3 effectively giving away its, brand name, its rights to a for-profit entity. And how is that? It's not necessarily that the organization is trying to profit from it, but how is that in furtherance of the organization's tax exempt purpose? So that's where that gets a little complicated.
Okay.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Andrew had a question as well.
it's more of a statement.
Oh, a statement, sorry.
The trademark program has been in place since early 2020, and in that time, we've only ever really had interest from our trademark licensing in relation to infringements. So people have generally obeyed cease and desist. They've never licensed our name commercially. So we've never come up with a palette of options, like you can have OWASP name in your marketing or whatever for $40,000 or $50,000, which is one of the original reasons it was approved back in 2020, was to try to get licensing from that. People have generally just removed OWASP name from their marketing materials rather than license some material. So we don't have a comp for licensing our details to a commercial entity. We have actually licensed our details to non-profit conferences, such as APSEC New Zealand, and it's not peppercorn rent. We have charged them. I don't know if I want to say it online because others might be interested as well. But at the end of the day, it's not peppercorn, and it represents what we might have received if we'd ran that non-profit conference ourselves after all said and done. So I just wanted to put that out there with our licensing of our trademarks. When it comes to 2029, when most of them expire, I will be letting most of them expire. And that would be my recommendation for a future board at that time, because we just haven't seen the return on investment with our trademarks.
Okay. Steve, I'm sorry, I might have cut you off. Did you have more to input there, or?
No, but I
Okay.
did have a follow-up question for Andrew, I guess.
Okay.
In terms of the recommendation for the board to cut off the renewal, I guess you're referring to the renewal of the trademark, right?
We have a wide range of trademarks throughout the world in many different countries where we don't have substantial business, and I would recommend not renewing those, particularly the ones under the Madrid Protocol. We haven't received any value from doing so, and it costs significant funds. I've literally got a 5K quote on my desk at the moment to just change our address to our current address.
Right.
And
So
that doesn't provide us any more protection.
Right. In terms of jurisdictions, though, you're talking about maybe the US and the EU, or
Yeah, and also limiting the number of registered trademarks to just the OWASP, Open Web Application Security Project, the worldwide one, and our logo. Those we perceive value, and I think we should protect them. But we have about 8 or 9 others. I think in total, in terms of permutations and the Madrid protocol, it's 20-something registrations. It's just too many. We're not getting any value. We're not protecting ourselves.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
I just want to bring it back to one thing that I did ask Aaron and Russ to do is permitted things that we can do. When you come to look at the business plan, Steve, I really need you to come up with things that only the corporation could do. So maybe it's a really good time to ask Aaron and Russ about things that we can't do that the for-profit can do and only the for-profit can do. Because most of the things that I brought up, many of them we can do. So I just want to make sure that we're not trying to shuffle income away from the nonprofit into this for-profit when we could actually do it today if we wanted to.
Yeah, I think that, in terms of what we can do, I mean, I've you've talked about certification and maybe moving that over to the for-profit. I mean, I don't see why you would want to do that. It seems like certification is directly in line with the mission. Mini conferences, if they're supporting, it's all about whether they support the tax exempt mission, right? If they do, then those things are fine. And if they're an extension of it, logical extension of it, and if you can make a good argument that they're in support of that mission, I think, then you're fine. What you can't do, I mean, real lobbying, beyond any de minimis kind of amount, that would be a problem. But it's, any of the things that are, so there's 2 things going on. One is, what would you have to move out to a for-profit if you wanted to do it? And then the question is, are you insulated by actually doing that? Because so you could do lobbying through the for-profit, but that only actually protects you if you're truly independent, right? If you've got enough overlap, or if it's seen as an extension of what you're doing, then it's just as much a problem as if you did it yourself, right? Although, maybe it's a little bit harder to see through. But so, real lobbying, probably would be an issue. Selling services that really aren't supportive. So if it's consulting services around OWASP stuff, but it's really the same as any other, commercial entity could do, and there's a market for it, arguably, that might be a problem. You might be able to somehow position that, at least with some internal memos, so that you have a defense if the IRS ever challenged it. Aaron, anything else stand out?
No, I agree with all that. I know, Andrew, you had mentioned maybe merchandise sales, things like that.
Yeah.
Certainly, I wouldn't imagine that's a huge revenue driver. If it's just kind of an ancillary revenue stream, you could certainly still do that within the tax exempt organization. It would just likely be taxable income, but it would be taxable in the for-profit sub as well. So that's something that you could isolate, but probably not really, not necessary to do that unless it rises to a very high level.
Yeah. So, folks, when we come to doing the 25th anniversary, which is our next year, I'm expecting merch sales to be a bit of a problem, and we will probably have to register for sales tax in wherever our merch processor is done. I probably will come back to you, Aaron, to find out where we need to domicile the merchandise sales tax issue, because we are going to be selling quite a lot of merch and we'll be promoting the hell out of it. Whereas we normally bring in $500, $1,000, $1,500 a year in merch at the moment.
I guess just to look at that question from a little bit different angle, another thing you really can't do as a non-for-profit as a nonprofit that only a for-profit could do is take in outside investment money, right? So if for some reason and you all know this, right? So you can't do that. But if for some reason you needed outside investment funds in order to kind of prop up some of these endeavors, right, then the only way to do that, unless they're willing to make donations, right, is maybe as a for-profit, setting up a for-profit so that they can at least invest. But then, the question is, what does that look like? And I don't think we're down that road yet, and we kind of talked about aspects of it. But so if you need capital that you can't otherwise get, maybe that's something you would need to have a for-profit for. But then the question is, does it all work? And does that somehow jeopardize things? And are you setting the control the right way? And how are distributions working? And you get into all the discussion that we just had.
And just a quick note on lobbying, because Russ mentioned that. That's a great point. So lobbying in an IRS tax exempt context is actually pretty narrowly defined as trying to influence legislation. So that means going out and campaigning for or against specific laws or for or against specific legislators, either at the local, state, federal level, or internationally. But it doesn't include kind of general awareness campaigns, lobbying at the, executive branch, administrative agencies, or things like that. So a lot of things get looped into lobbying, but it may not actually be lobbying from an IRS perspective. So it's just something to think about. I'm not sure exactly what you guys are engaged in or thinking about being engaged in.
Yeah, I think the closest we probably come to that is providing public comments to government drafts of things. Yeah, that's likely the closest that we come to that, which is not lobbying. I have a question regarding what the for-profit versus nonprofit can and cannot do. Is it also possible to then not necessarily focus on the things that maybe a for-profit can do that a nonprofit cannot, but the type of risk that the foundation is willing to have versus not? For example, we can do certifications, right? That's not hard. However, there is a certain amount of risk in that. They actually sell insurance dedicated for certification liability. If that's something the foundation doesn't want to take on, could we have a legitimate case in transferring that kind of risk to the foundation or to the for-profit entity?
Sure. I think that it's certainly a consideration. It doesn't necessarily need to be tax exempt versus non-tax exempt or profit making or not, but it could be a liability protection consideration. So go ahead.
And certification programs often are run by outside companies, right? So there are plenty of tax exempts, standards organizations and things like that that set up, that have relationships with third party labs, third party certification authorities, third party that run the whole thing, and there are commercial arrangements in place. And you can insulate, if you're worried about the risk of certification, you can insulate yourself quite a bit just contractually with indemnities, et cetera, and also get insurance. The things that there are aspects of that would be hard to insulate yourself from, like if the thing that they're certifying to is a certain way to do software or a certain standard. If the liability comes from actually implementing that approach, that's kind of on you, so to speak, because you're the one that developed the approach. It's hard for you. It would have a hard time having a third-party certification authority absorb risk for that kind of liability. But the other liability, like making good decisions about who's certified and who's not, and doing the certification testing process correctly and all that stuff, you can distance yourself from a lot of that contractually.
Okay. Thank you.
No. And you can share in their, by the way, you can share in their revenues, right? Because this is all directly, I would think, on point in terms of, supporting your tax exempt mission is, certification, that whole process. So, you could have a revenue stream. They do the certifications, you get a piece of the profit that comes into them.
All right. Are there any more questions? comments, concerns?
I just want to say thank you to Russ and Aaron for preparing this information. What I'll do is I'll summarize this incredible, we'll get the transcript, I'll run it through a transcription process and provide the other written advice that Aaron and Russ have provided. And Steve, I'll make sure that you get both of those early. So that, you know, if you do want to have some more follow-up, I'm more than happy for you to communicate directly with Russ and Aaron. I don't think there's any reason why that shouldn't happen. I don't want to play telephone tag with anyone.
Yeah,
Um,
agreed.
Yeah,
you know,
we're happy to answer any questions you guys have. Please reach out directly. That's totally fine.
I
yeah,
appreciate
and
it.
they're fully briefed, so I think that'd be really great. And so thank you.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for joining us.
Great. Thank you guys. Take care.
Good meeting you all.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. All right, Andrew, I think we're at the point where you can provide us with your management reports.
Yes. Okay. I'm going to try and make it quick because Sam did want to put in a couple of extra items. I'm assuming you can see my slide there.
Yes, sir.
I apologize for the wall of text. Okay, the marketing role, final candidate has been selected. I have had an email back from her from overnight, and she is looking forward to starting, but she needs to see the actual job offer, and to do that, I need some information from her. So I'll be following that up in the next couple of days. So hopefully, she'll start with us before the end of October. She has a 4-week notice period with her employer, and this will be our first employee outside the United States other than myself. So she will be going through the same EOR that I have. So that'll be interesting.
Yep.
The website migration is extremely well underway. We are awaiting the final touches on getting it to go live. There was some concerns about some of the QA items that I put out there that hadn't been taken care of in the staging environment. I just want to make sure that they're fully done and make sure that all the chapter pages are fully copied across. And so Christian will provide us an update on that. Just like the migration from Magento to the wiki and from the wiki to Harold's solution, which was a good solution while it lasted. This migration will also have rough patches and missing content. And so what we'll do is we've been monitoring for broken links, people coming in with hard links directly into our website, and figure out how do we do the redirects to where they can get that information from, or whether we need to continue that information.
Andrew, just a quick question on that. You're certain that we're going to take this over, right? We don't need the agency past the point of them providing the website, right?
It's all built upon a CMS, so I'm pretty sure that we'll be able to do it. I think if we have to change the website design, like its look and feel, outside of minor color changes and things like that, like if we need a brand new element somewhere on our website, we might need to go back to them. But
Okay.
in terms of content, we should be fine.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
So the main thing from my perspective is we're not trying to boil the ocean here. We are trying to get a good looking, healthy marketing type website that actually appeals to people to do the major calls to action, such as joining, becoming a corporate supporter, coming to our events and things like that. We also want them to go to chapter meetings. We also want them to participate in our 20th anniversary. So that's what it's designed to do. There's a lot more than that on our current website. What we need to do is figure out what are the major things that we're missing, and that will happen over the next couple of months. www community is the main one that I'm worried about. It's fairly active. It has a hard link. Some of the resources there are sort of wiki-like in many ways. So, but policy and board, they're already done. So what we need to do now is just make sure that when we go live with this thing, that we're not missing some major part of our website that the public really wants. And I think WW Community is probably the biggest one right now. One of the other QA items that I had was the committees page, and I haven't seen an update on that one yet, but we'll make sure it's there before it's too long if it's not there. As Chris said, audit and budget have been audits on track. The budget has started. I involved Harold in the first meeting. I want to make sure that your initiatives covered off in that. But the main ones that we want to do is the 25th anniversary, and those locations that Chris was talking about were primarily 25th anniversary budget locations. Working groups. I really want to get an automated solution in here for creating working groups, and we had a problem with the projects. When we moved to Glue Up, many of the automations broke. And so we were manually creating projects. They are now back to being fully automated, and that will actually form the basis of the working group automation as well. So automation of working groups will get there. I will make sure that all the approved working groups can get going using G Suite and Slack in the meantime. But if they want to have their own little website and publish stuff, then having a GitHub repo with a website associated with that is probably the way to go. The old entity, we are struggling to maintain traction with anyone other than Martin. Martin has very nicely replied. I really do appreciate his attention to this matter, but I haven't heard from the other two directors. I will continue to follow up with them. They need to organise a time that's suitable for the three of them and go to Belgium. I've offered to cover their travel expenses and just get this thing done. I've provided them the banking details. It's just a matter of getting them to engage and get it done. The new entity, we are still waiting for the Belgian government to approve it. As of yesterday, no news. Uncategorized income, we talked about that. The September membership drive, I was hoping to have some statistics with both my wife going into hospital. I have not had a chance to look at the current things, but looking at the membership income, it's relatively healthy in a way that I suppose that it's working well. So it is above the budgeted membership, individual membership income, so yay. Also, there was the surprise announcement last Friday of the H1B $100,000 fee. So looks like, you know, our decision last September last the year to move back to Australia has actually worked out in Noel's favor by a lot. So yay. But even then, I got an emergency email from our immigration lawyers saying if you're outside the country, don't come back on the H1B because there might be a $100,000 fee. That's now been clarified. There isn't a $100,000 fee for coming back into the country for existing visa holders. But it's so much in flux. There's just a lot going on. I just think, honestly, it's a good thing that I'm no longer in this process, and OWASP isn't on the hook for any of this sort of $100,000 fee thing. So that simplifies matters a great deal. What it does do is it limits our opportunities in the future to hire good staff in the United States who might want to immigrate to the United States. I think that's probably outside our financial reach. And so if in the future we just, like with our next hire, we have an opportunity of hiring them in their local country, I think that's probably our best bet. Okay, that's enough said on that. The board elections, the requests for the individuals, there are a couple of board members here. I do thank Steve for completing his page. Thank you. Dawn, go for it.
I sent out an update today. I had someone, I'm not really sure why, because it's the same form letter that we've had for I don't know how many years, that they couldn't access pages. So I sent up to all the candidates literally a step by step, like hit the pencil button to edit the file, double click this, double click that. So there was only one person who said that, and I'm not really sure why. And Andrew just said, Steve, you were able to get to your page, no problem. Did you go to your page? Did he said you updated your page?
Yeah, I've got the pull request up. I don't think it's been merged yet, but
okay, all right. But you were able to access it by what the email said, correct?
I didn't go by what the email said because I
okay.
just knew how to do it, but I can review the email if you like.
Well, it's all right. I sent an update because other people were able to do it fine. It's the same way, but I sent a new one updated to, you know, simplify, hit this button, hit this button. So I'll go look at I'll work with Andrew on the pull request or Harold's. We'll get that done today. And, but otherwise we're going along good.
No, I use your email. It's working fine for me.
Yours work fine?
Yeah.
Okay, so it must have been that one person, but it made me a little nervous and was first thing this morning. So I sent new instructions for anyone in case there was an issue.
Okay.
And so I've just merged yours, Steve, and I'm about to do Gustavo Oreza as well. So that's really good.
Quick question, if I may. Is the barrier to entry using GitHub with pull requests, is the barrier to entry too high?
If someone emailed us what they wanted to put there, I'm sure we put up for them. There's no reason why we wouldn't, but that wasn't the instructions that we provided.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
And just looking at other people who might have done this. Okay. So the main one that I want to go through, just for the interest of time, is Lauren on the call?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Lauren, if you just go through some of the event stuff. It's been a few months since we've had an update on events, and I just want to make sure that we get through this particular meeting.
Okay, this is currently on the exhibitor and sponsorship slide. Did you want to speak to that, or did you want to speak to the actual events?
I think the main ones are the upcoming events, in particular AppSec DC, how we're going in terms of registrations and training. If there's anything the board can do to help with ticket sales or anything else you'd like them to do.
I mean, of course, I would love for you guys to continue to push and promote, especially on your social media within your companies. The more we get the word out, the better that it is. We're doing some targeted LinkedIn campaigns just to try to drive a few more attendees, especially from the tri-state area where it's easy, it's a no-brainer to go. But the ticket sales, I've been running weekly pace reports comparing our registration numbers this year compared to last year in the US. And we're almost identical. I think 6 weeks out, we had 240 registrations. And this year, at the end of the day yesterday, we had 237. So, and we've been pacing right there, either within 5 tickets the entire time for the past 3 weeks. So it's been very interesting to see. As you know, it's around that 3 and 4 week mark that we see the biggest increase. We are sold out of sponsorships and currently trying to find new ways to creative ways to find more sponsorship opportunities, but the floor itself is completely sold out. So all in all, everything is going great for DC, and I look forward to seeing you guys who will be there. I look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah. So for those who are interested, LustCon is actually in October. It's a great conference. If there's any sort of promotion you might want to do to get folks attending, if there's any additional exhibitor space that might be able to be sold, that'd be really great. It's a well-run conference by seasoned professionals who do the great job. You might see there that AppSec Israel did not make a profit this year. I honestly, we've just signed up for AppSec Israel again next year, and Lauren has done the hard yards to encourage them to be more profitable. We like Basque, $80. I'm not worried. 42,000. 42,000.
This is just on the exhibitor. It's not the overall P&L.
Oh, okay.
The P&L is found in the events thing, the events slides. But I did have a great call with Ori, and he was very receptive of the feedback and working together. We'll also be putting together, since we have our AppSec Day events applying earlier in the year, we'll have a complete list of our 2026 events, and we're going to put that in our exhibitor folder for DC so companies can see the full picture of what OWASP has to offer and budget accordingly for the 2026 year. Mm-hmm. And hopefully that will help Israel too.
Yeah.
And how was
Okay.
the AppSec Singapore? How did it go? Was it like, well, one of our first AppSec days in Singapore? And did we have a lot of new members or attendees there?
So AppSec Day Singapore, this was our second year that we've done it in person. And we fell behind a little bit on the registration revenue, even though attendance was still right around where we wanted it to be, but we did budget aggressively. However, that was saved because we had a lot of sponsorship revenue that came in that exceeded the original budget. But the feedback has been great. I've seen photos and received some feedback from speakers and attendees, and it seems like everything went really well.
Sounds good. Yeah. Thank you,
Okay.
Lauren.
Yeah.
The rest of the materials are available in the slides. I haven't updated the statistics. I will do that and then send it through for your review. I don't think there's anything like truly worrying that the board should get involved in. I do want to say thank you to everyone on the team, Christian, Dawn, Hayden, Star, for getting chapters and membership tickets back on track. They're now down to historic lows, and in particular, we're keeping on top of them, which is the main thing. So again, thank you to the entire team for getting that done. It is you know, we do get a lot of different tickets over time, and some of the requests are a little bit interesting. So yeah. With that, I will return the floor to Ricardo.
Sure. So the next one is a review of the community review policy, which currently lasts 30 days, I believe. And I proposed an adjustment to give us 21 days for public comment and a subsequent 30 days for the policy review team to consider comments and make recommendations to the board. Where I see the organization can optimize, I would put it forward. And this is such a case where I think that we can shave a few days off here. I think that's a fair amount of time for people to provide feedback publicly, and to optimize how we get off these policies and how we approve them. So there is a motion in there, but obviously I wanted to open it up to discussion. I believe, Sam, you had some comments last time, and you and Andrew were to go off and do some research in this area. So did your research uncover any impediments that will prevent us from making this change? Or I guess the first question is, did you guys actually do the research?
I must admit, I have not had a chance.
Okay.
And I believe Sam was rather ill.
I was off
and-
sick. That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
But I can clarify what we need here, Ricardo and Andrew. We need to look
Okay.
at the data, and I think that this is because we can only make a decision based on the data, and the data is for us to go back and look at the policies and look at those policies which had a successful review process, including community review, and basically look at the timeline, because I think there was a claim made that most of the policies, when we put them out for the community review, they get like a spike of comments at the beginning, the first couple of weeks, and then it kind of dries down. And Ricardo came up with a point saying, well, it's just a waste of time. Let's improve efficiency and bring it
Yeah.
back.
I would
my
challenge your regurgitation of words there. So I would carefully tread there, Sam. Let's not offend anyone here. The issue here, I think, is that where I see an optimization, and here we could optimize this to get stuff out quicker. I don't see a huge downside to reducing the amount of days. If people know that this is the period that this has to be done, I believe that is very fair. We're not doing this in secret. This is an open public discussion. Folks will be notified. Nothing stops us from notifying people in advance that we're even going to have a period. So say we are working on that policy for 30 days prior to the review period, we can give them notice months in advance if we wanted to. So nothing's going to happen in secret. Everything is going to be communicated, and I think communication is the key here, right? It's not the fact that we're trying to hide anything. It's not the fact that people are making erroneous statements. I believe that the statements came from persons who were close to that review process. So I would sooner give them the benefit of the doubt. And like you said, I would also encourage us to look at the data as well. But I don't think this is a huge thing, but I encourage us to look at that data and maybe circle back after, and maybe if someone can put a report together or some statistics together so we can actually look at this holistically and make a decision from there. I'm very happy to do that. But yeah, let's be civil about that. Did you have any more comments, or does anyone have any more comments on this point?
I think we just need to generate a timeline that would actually work. I think the biggest thing is that there needs to be pre-reading time for the board, so they can actually look at the new incoming changes and make sure that they're actually providing informed consent to a change to the bylaw, as it does require 2/3 to pass. Then work backwards from there. How does it actually work? And I think honestly, the way that the policy review team has worked, I've been a member of it for a few years, has been to work reasonably asynchronously with folks providing commentary and then merging changes into the current drafts. It really comes back to that last week. I think this is where I think the thing that's going to be interesting is from the end of the public comments to making sure that all of the comments are actually merged or dealt with, have been dealt with before the board's review time. From when we do the board prep call to the next board meeting, they need time to review that. The board, the policy review team needs time to get that done before then. So I think it's just a matter of establishing a timeline that could be looked at and agreed to. I don't think there's anything really here impeding that parallelization. I don't think there's a need for 21 days of public comment and then 30 days worth of review. It's never taken that long.
Yeah.
Harold?
Great. Harold?
Minor point of contention. Maybe I don't remember it correctly, but I thought I was the one who seconded this motion.
Oh, who's the saver? Oh, Avi. Oh, I don't know. I honestly can't remember.
Harold, I will get it changed, and then when you approve the minutes, it'll be done. Avi's obviously not here, so we will do that change for you.
Okay. So unless there are any objections, I think we can continue this conversation at a later board meeting. And I would like to thank everyone for their input and look forward to discussing this in the future.
Thanks,
Okay.
Ricardo. And I just want to have my comment. One of the things here, just to make sure that the timeline is fair and it takes into account things like people can be on vacation for, say, 2 weeks or more, or people be off sick. And if we really shorten it, we just need to make sure that the timeline is fair and it's not too tight. When we say, okay, this is ready, you have to review and resolve all the comments within the short period of time. Otherwise, no, the deadline is tomorrow, or whatever. So you just make sure that the timeline is fair, and we look at it and actually rely on the data as well. What is a fair notice period?
Okay. Thank you, Sam. All right. Let's move on to the next one because I think we have an executive session as well. We're about an hour and 22 minutes in. We have a discussion. Pardon?
Also, while we're talking about changes, I have had a private discussion with Ricardo. We also need to talk at the very end about moving the October board meeting to the Wednesday of the public board meeting at APSIC DC. So I'd like to have a little bit of time, probably a couple of minutes, just to make sure that that's what the board wants to do for the October board meeting.
Okay, certainly. We can definitely discuss it then. Can we move on to the discussion on the chapter leader orientation course? I believe Sam has brought up this discussion point. Sam, do you want to lead us off in this discussion?
Yes, sure. So
Okay.
I have a proposal, and I know some of the staff support this as well, is to introduce a mandatory OWASP chapter leader orientation training for new chapter leaders. This comes from my experience of being on the OWASP chapter committee before becoming a board member, and obviously running OWASP London chapter for 10 years. I see a lot of chapter leaders when they just starting their journey. They have zero understanding of OWASP's policies, procedures, how OWASP works. And the main reason for this is, I think, the fact that when they become chapter leaders, they just send the documentation, which has a checkbox and says, the chapter leaders agreement says, I accept that I have read all the relevant policies, chapter policy, expense policy, on all the relevant policies, and I want to become a chapter leader. They just tick the box, the usual I accept button. And then when it comes to the operations of the chapter, we start getting lots of problems. Well, one of the problems is that a lot of chapter leaders, when they become chapter leaders, they just don't run any events. They don't run chapter meetings. They have no idea how many chapter meetings they need to run during the year. The ones who are running chapter meetings, they have no idea how to claim expenses. There are some chapter leaders who are claiming some outrageous expenses, demanding money for things which are completely unreasonable. So the idea is quite simple for us, is to form a working group which will work on creation of the orientation training course. And the training course will explain to new chapter leaders OWASP mission, structure, chapter leader responsibilities, to make sure that they understand how to run compliant, engaging, and inclusive meetups for the community, how to correctly apply expense policies, how to handle sponsorships, how to use OWASP shared services such as Zoom, live streaming, chapter resources, how to get merchandise, OWASP tablecloths, and most importantly, how to promote OWASP membership during the chapter meetings as well, because that is something which is quite important. I know, for example, Andrew is started running a membership drive, right? But if every single chapter were to promote OWASP membership, I think we would have quite a few more members. That is the idea, and the idea is to have a series of videos talking about these topics, and then have a quiz at the end. And only after the quiz is complete, and obviously the idea is that no prospective chapter leader can complete the quiz unless they actually watched all the videos, watched the training course. Only after that, when we get the positive confirmation of the completion, they come to the next stage, which is where they acknowledge and digitally sign the leaders agreement, and then they become a chapter leader. That is my proposal, and obviously that is to be run using a working group, which will be composed by some of the members of the chapter committee and all the seasoned and experienced chapter leaders who have been doing this for a long time.
Okay, I think it's a great idea. Have you submitted to start a working group, or is this just a discussion and you're gonna determine next steps?
I was just about to submit the working group request to Andrew, but it's a discussion to seek feedback from the board as well. Because again, when we have this will be probably the first orientation training course. For example, do we need the same thing for project leaders? I'm not sure, because I've only been on the chapter committee, so I'm very much interested to make sure that we have chapter leaders who understand all this, and they spend 45 minutes or 1 hour being trained and prepared to the journey in OWASP.
Oh, wow. We have several questions here. We'll go Harold, Steve, Diego, then Ashwini. So take it away, Harold, and a comment as well. Yeah.
So my thing is several things. I do support this idea, the idea of the working group. The second comment is technically this is purely operational within Andrew's purview to create working groups. And if he decides that this works for the organization, then hey, cool. Third, the point where I think it becomes necessary for the board to get involved in it, as you said, you wanted to make it a requirement, which then would mean a change to the policy. So I assume that part of this will be a
That's correct.
request
The
to change
chapter of the
policy.
chapter policy. Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
That's it.
Okay, Steve?
You're on mute, Steve.
Agree with everyone, everything that Harold just mentioned, and completely support the idea. It is an ops issue, but I did have a couple questions. Um, I think the first question I have is around the effectiveness. How are you going to plan to, um, how are you going to take this checkbox exercise that you currently have today and have any kind of governance around that? Because I think just saying watch these videos is also a checkbox exercise. So are
It's the
we
quiz
actually
at the
solving?
end, Steve. It's the quiz at the end. So
Okay,
it's not just the watch the videos, it's the quiz at the end that they have to complete and score, let's say 8 out of 10 questions. So they need to answer 10 questions about how to run OWASP chapters, what is expected of them, their roles, responsibilities, and benefits of becoming an OWASP chapter leader.
got it. And my second question then, I'm glad you said that. My second question then is there any new tool that the foundation staff would need to deploy in order for us to do so?
We already have Blended and we already have Google Classroom. So there's an alternative there for both alternatives. I think Sam had done a proof of concept in Google Classroom. Many schools
Yeah, and we
use
got
it.
access to Blended, so Star granted us access to Blended as well. So we'll see whichever one is easy, because the actual content is a series of videos for the different parts of the course, and the last part is the examination part or the quiz part where they have to answer the 10 questions.
Got it.
And the
Thank you.
score to be provided back to OWASP staff operationally, whichever one is easier. I think there's got to be some sort of proof of concept or investigation phase where we try to do a miniature course in 2 platforms and compare which one is easier.
Thanks.
Diego?
Diego?
Yeah, I think it's a really good idea, Sam, and I also would like to add that it's should be extended to all the chapters, the existing chapter leaders, this training, instead of just for the new ones. Because here, at least here in Brazil, I was speaking with some of the leaders, and they doesn't know the operational stuff for OWASP, how they do stuff with OWASP. So it's really important to run this and as Steven mentioned, also track who did that to establish who is good to be the leader itself.
I think it's a great idea. Again, I would support that we first launch it for the new chapter leaders, and then perhaps have a program where we gradually ask the existing chapter leaders to pass this course. And again, the main idea would be that there are a lot of changes in the policies. So I know a lot of existing chapter leaders, they're going to say, are not aware of expense policies, chapter policies, event policies. And obviously we are introducing quite a lot of changes, right? So obviously the idea of the course would be to remind the leaders that these policies exist. These are the URLs. We'll try to make sure that we don't copy paste the policy content because it changes all the time. But the chapter leaders is aware where that the policies exist, where to find them, right? And how to stay informed on the changes of the policies as well. They have to read the leaders channel on Slack periodically. They have to read the leaders mailing list, right? Because a lot of people are not even aware of the existing of these things.
Yeah,
It probably comes down to just really quick, Ricardo, sorry. Sure. The policy requires us to get an annual leader confirmation agreement, and we currently don't track that. This could become part of that requirement, and then we actually implement that particular procedure. But then it comes down to we've always had low compliance with a lot of these things. We asked leaders to become members, that became policy, and we still have leaders who are not members. So we're going to be closing people's Google accounts as the carrot or the stick is the way you might see it. But at the end of the day, there needs to be some sort of consequence for not doing this, and it's not addressed currently in policy. So let's get it tested. I think, honestly, let's get it tested and then start thinking about how do we actually implement it, not just operationally, but also in policy.
Good point. Ashwini?
Yeah, so I love the idea of for both chapter leaders as well as project leaders, right? And I think I agree with all of you on your comments. It's a good idea to reinforce it every year, like Andrew just said. I think that makes it much more efficient. And I believe it has to be like a shorter and a quicker training rather than something long and time consuming. Then probably we might risk the chance of somebody not wanting to complete it, right? So that's probably just a very minute risk out there. So that's something that we'll have to be mindful of, is what I think. But otherwise, I just love the idea. And I had another question. So what if somebody goes through the training and say, the training says you ought to have a number of meetings in a year at this particular location, and they don't try to follow it? How are we tracking it? What are we doing about this? Are we raising a flag? I don't think so, right?
We currently do try to find chapters who are not meeting. Our first priority is to get them to meet rather than trying to disband them. But at the end of the day, there are chapters who just outright refuse to meet, or the leadership is doing it for resume reasons and not whatever. We face that mostly with student chapters rather than anything else. Trying to do an end run around city chapters that already exist, but they don't like the leadership, that sort of thing. There needs to be a lot of review around this stuff. And I think, honestly, the chapter policy needs to be reviewed in light of activity requirements. One of the biggest problems at the moment is people are not required to use any particular platform to run their meetings. And so if they use a platform that's not Meetup, it's actually really hard for us to find out if they've actually had a meeting.
Yeah, I think it'll be good to take a look at this. Yeah.
We actually have a control in place when we revised the process when BlueUp came online and Hayden took it over fully. So we do have a follow-up process to ensure the first meeting within 90 days, and then a secondary check. You literally just add a task to BlueUp. So Hayden's taking care of that. Because she's right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. In interest of time, are there any more questions? If there are like 1 or 2 minutes, or can we move on to the next items?
I think if this is successful, I think, honestly, a board member orientation course would be really awesome.
Yes. That would be awesome. Then we'll move on to the next point, but I'll ask a question at this point because I know we have an executive session. I'm not sure exactly how much time. Sam, how much time do you need for your discussion? Just give me a sense of how long do you think it will take? 5, 10 minutes?
I'm not sure which discussion. We've just finished my discussion.
The audit committee
you had
and the
another
project
one,
summit.
the 2 that we were going to do
Oh,
at
the
end.
second one was yours. That was the forming of the audit committee. This is the one that you asked for at the previous meeting, and we ran out of it.
Yes, but I thought you had another one that
No.
wasn't
Yeah, there's
done.
the project summit, but I
Oh,
saw
the
that
project
got-
summit.
yeah.
Yeah, there was the project summit is, but we ran out of time. I'll probably take it offline. Because
I will
that was just
probably
basically
take mine
feedback
offline then.
on Andrew's Andrew's message.
Okay.
And again, maybe something to discuss at DC, really, because next meeting will be at DC.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I
No,
would
no.
like my point to be added to next week's agenda to give it enough time for discussion. So I would honestly like to adjourn and then go to executive session because I kind of have a hard stop at the top of the hour, if no one minds. So the next board meeting shall be determined in the executive meeting. Right now it's slated for October 28th, but we may or may not push that date. So we will get that next date written up, after we have that discussion. So it is moved. Does anyone second the adjournment? Steve?
Well,
Okay.
hang on. We have one question because Andrew proposed to have a motion to move the meeting time for the next meeting time. We will need to vote on that one.
It's in the chat.
Andrew.
Oh, did you? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a
So you
really
need to read it
simple.
out, Ricardo.
Yeah. So let's do the motion that Andrew has in the chat. I will read it out. Resolve the 28th of October 2025 global board meeting is delayed by 8 days to Wednesday, November 4th at 5 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time to be held in person at the Global AppSec DC Conference. The 25th November board meeting is unchanged. And let me just get up my list here. Going from top to bottom. Steve,
Yes.
Harold,
Yes.
Sam,
Yes.
Ashwini,
Yes.
Diego,
Yes.
and that's yes for myself, Ricardo. So that motion passes. Thank you very much for putting that in there, Andrew.
No worries. I'll get that changed in the minutes of
In
this.
the minute.
And
Yeah.
in terms of the sponsor and the second, Andrew, do we need a sponsor and a second for this one?
We do.
We
Yes.
do. I'll sponsor it if someone can second that.
Diego will second it.
Okay, great. Great, Diego. Thank you very kindly. All right, and that should be all squared away. All right, so it is moved and seconded to adjourn. Those in favor say aye.
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 All right, thank you very much for attending, and we're gonna move to executive session. Please, directors, hold on.
Yeah, and Andrew, please stop the recording.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you
worries.
very
Bye.
much.
Thank
Have a great
you.
day. All right.
Give me a tick while I get the recording stopped.
All right, and let's make sure we send out our communication, especially to Evie, who wasn't in attendance, that the meeting is moved.